Now we know that 20th of Jan, probably closer to that date, Trump is taking office. So once he announces that they're going to add Bitcoin as part of their strategic stockpile or reserve asset, whatever you call it, I feel that the first thing what they're going to do is they're going to reserve that 200,000 Bitcoin what they have. They got it through the Silk Road, and they're going to move that coins as part of their strategic reserve without printing money and buying Bitcoin or without selling their gold certificates and moving that money. Hey everyone, welcome to SatsOverCents. I am Varun, your host, and I have AJ with me. And today's topic is about what are the fears around Bitcoin. I would say these are the common fears what we're going to be discussing. And everybody goes through this, I would say, doubt that they have in everybody's mind because it eventually is all about, investing or saving your hard-earned money into Bitcoin. And what are the fears people go through it before they're convinced that this is the right investment or the saving tool. So to start with, let's talk about the first thing which comes in every person's mind, which is Bitcoin price volatility. And to address that, AJ, I would love to know your perspective because I know that after I was orange pilled, I did the same with you. So, and price volatility is number one when it comes to the fears around Bitcoin, right? And so I just wanted to understand your perspective, how you were convinced that Bitcoin is the way forward.
Yeah, so hi everyone, and thanks Varun for having me. Uh, the fears of Bitcoin, what were the fears? I think the first fear was that the price is too volatile. So to just share some numbers, August this year, price was no, sorry, we are in 2025 by the way. Happy New Year, everyone. In in August of 2024, the price was trending at around 48,000 US dollars. And we all know it's crossed 100,000, very recently in December of 2024. So to give you an idea, the first biggest fear that generally people have when I speak to people is about the price volatility. Like the prices can fluctuate by, 100%. That is a pro and a con, and I think it's kind of what defines Bitcoin. Now, mind you, the supply for Bitcoin is limited. So any shocks on the upside or the downside will be big shocks. When I say that, why? Because there's only so much that people can buy, and there's so much demand. So the demand is very high, but supply is fixed. Also, bearing in mind, last year we had in 2024 the halving cycle for Bitcoin. And generally, the trend is that the price shoots up immediately after the halving trend, but it didn't. It was pretty volatile. And then, of course, there were other updates last year. For example, the ETFs, came into existence. So I think what I'm really trying to say is the price volatility is an extension, is a personality of the asset itself, which is Bitcoin, for the reasons I've outlined. Also, I think it's only been 15, 16 years that Bitcoin has been in existence. So I think as and when it matures, the price volatility will reduce simply because there'll be a lot more people who would want to buy. At the same time, there might or might not be a lot more people who might want to sell. So the only reason the price actually fluctuate is there is too much demand on either side. So let's take an example on the demand side. There's too much demand on the buy side where it shoots the price up. Why? Because people are willing to pay higher prices for the same number of Bitcoin. That's why the price shoots up, because there's a surge in demand in a very short span. And at the same time, if people start selling because of some negative news in the media, then there are a lot more sellers selling more Bitcoin, and they're ready to accept lower prices because it's a risky asset, they want to get out of it. And that's why the price keeps falling down. So that's the main reason why the volatility happens. But that's only because it is still new. People still speculate on it. There's now futures, ETFs, and things like that. So we will see for the foreseeable future those price fluctuations and that volatility in Bitcoin.
Okay, and just to I have a counter question on this as well. So how, let's say, because we cannot control the volatility in the market, right? So how can, as someone who's just stepping into this Bitcoin world, who basically is a no coiner but now getting exposed to Bitcoin and putting Bitcoin as part of their portfolio, how can one take advantage of that? Now, knowing that we cannot time the market and we can only spend time in the market. So what would you recommend to someone who's just getting into
I think if there are some regular listeners on this episode, we keep saying this in every episode. Dollar cost averaging is the way forward, because then as you said, you don't have to time the market. It's just a matter of spending time in the market. I think the strategy with dollar cost average is simple. Let's accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can because you have a long-term investment horizon. I'm talking 3, 5, 10, 15, whatever your horizon is. Yeah, that's the best way. But if you do get some extra cash somehow, somewhere, and if you see the price is down, then if I was that person who had some extra cash lying somewhere, I would pump in that money. Dollar cost averaging is the way forward.
That's very good advice. Thank you for that. And also, to just for our listeners, just to add what AJ just mentioned, Bitcoin is also highly liquid, right? It's 24/7, 365 days a year. So that is why price is also very volatile because of that. That anybody can buy or sell with just a smartphone anywhere in the world, right? And also to avoid that, avoid the volatility. If everybody actually starts self-custodying their coins, it would be difficult for the exchanges to sell somebody paper Bitcoin. Where actually we've seen that with Mt. Gox, we have seen that with FTX exchanges, where technically they don't even have the Bitcoins they claim that they've been selling to
Mm.
customers, and they're just selling paper Bitcoin, and people don't realize it. They buy it and they leave the coins on the exchanges. So this is also one of the factors that if you really don't want volatility to hit you hard, you should self custody your coin. That's why it's a very famous phrase in our community where we say, no, not your keys, not your coins. So it's very important that you self custody it, and so that you are not getting into the trap of buying paper Bitcoins. You're actually buying Bitcoin. So if you really want to buy paper Bitcoin, then rather buy an ETF rather than going on an exchange and buying Bitcoin and leaving it there. So that is something I would recommend to all our listeners.
Yeah, so one last point I want to make on regards to the price volatility when we talk about Bitcoin. So mind you, there are Bitcoin futures which trades just like how you would trade S&P 500 or Nasdaq futures. Um, And what that does is that liquidates a lot of positions, which also pushes the price up or down. So, like I said, if somebody has a bulk of Bitcoin and they're selling at the time when everybody's asleep, then that can drastically drop the price. At the same time, recover the price because there might be some stop limit orders that might be triggered. But yeah, to bear in mind that there is futures market on Bitcoin that also makes the price really volatile. But once you are looking at the price from a long-term horizon, that really doesn't matter to you. In fact, it can work in your favor because you can put some stop limit orders yourself to buy Bitcoin and forget about it. So set and forget if you have a target price. But that's only for advanced users. If you're basic starting off in Bitcoin, I think dollar cost averaging is the way for even the advanced as well as beginners as well.
Thank you for that. Yes. So moving on, I have another fears that people talk about is the on the regulation part. Where nowadays you cannot buy Bitcoin without KYC. KYC is basically is know your client, where you have to disclose all your personal identification and all of that. You have to upload some kind of ID which is issued by the government and so on and so forth, and anti-money laundering and all of that. Yes. So what do you say? Is that a fear anymore, or that has been, I would say, resolved after the ETFs were launched, and now people no longer have that as a fear when it comes to Bitcoin?
No, I think there are fears because, as you know, Bitcoin initially was started as a medium of exchange on a website called Silk Road. I don't know if you've heard of it,
Yes,
where
I
they
have.
were trading really, the wrong stuff, the illegal stuff, and were using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. So Bitcoin does have that legacy reputation, which is why I think it's important to have some sort of a regulation. I think after Donald Trump, president elect in the US, in his manifesto for presidency, he had mentioned that he will bring regulation for Bitcoin and it will make it safer by knowing who the customer is, who's behind the machine, who's actually buying or selling crypto or Bitcoin. So I think that is one piece that is really exciting. I don't think anybody should fear that. Why? Because the US government now, which is in power, which is Donald Trump, is pro Bitcoin and pro crypto. And that only means that the regulation, whether it's concerning any anti money laundering or any KYC requirements, will all be covered through a specific Bitcoin policy. There is a thing called Bitcoin Act, which I am reading into these days. I don't quite understand. I don't know quite yet what that means, but I do know that there is a Bitcoin Act, and I think there will be more regulation this year once Donald Trump has taken seat and set the stage. Maybe give him a few months, and they will come up with some sort of a strong, healthy policy that would favor everyone for investing in Bitcoin and crypto.
Okay, and what about countries like India, where they are charging their customers 18% GST or whatever amount you plan to buy today when it comes to Bitcoin? What do you have to say about that?
I think that's like sales tax, right? Like that's like VAT in most countries, or VAT, or whatever you want to call it. And I think, yes, that is an indirect tax, or sometimes people call it like double taxation. And I think Bitcoin is one of those assets which you can buy through your dollar cost averaging to mitigate those risks of double taxation as well as inflation. But I think, Varun, you have much more in depth knowledge on this topic than I do. So I'll pass on the mic to you to share your thoughts on this as well.
Okay, thank you, AJ. Just to add here, eventually I feel that every country will come on the same page or the same level because Bitcoin is decentralized and it's peer-to-peer technology, right? And yes, right now, currently, India is charging 18% GST, which is, I feel, it's quite unfair on consumers because no one else you like if you have to buy wherever you are living and if I have to buy wherever I'm living, I don't pay any taxes, sales tax or VAT or anything you call, right? You're investing, you're saving your money. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
so this means that the government is discouraging the people to move away from the traditional finance, right? But eventually when they see that people have different ways of investing money into Bitcoin. And eventually, it's like somebody is charging you when you have to book profits or when you have to sell some of your Bitcoin in order to buy back your time or your freedom or for anything
Mm-hmm.
else. There are countries who are charging capital gains tax, right? Eventually, they will all stop charging capital gains tax because there are countries they don't charge it, it's 0%. So people will have the flexibility of moving to those countries and booking their profits. Similarly, when it comes to buying Bitcoin in India, currently, yes, there are challenges, but if they do not come onto the same page as other developed countries or developing countries, people are going to move out of that country and go to countries where they get cheaper Bitcoin for their money. So eventually, even
Absolutely.
all countries will have to come onto the same platform because Bitcoin gives you that power. That is why it is decentralized. The reason they are embracing it because they couldn't fight it and they couldn't ban it. That's why you see Russia talking about, mining with government resources and so on and so on. So yes, yeah, eventually everybody will be on the same page.
But I think the other follow-up question that I have on that topic is different governments are claiming it to be different things. What do you foresee in 2025 and 2026 governments coming into some sort of a unity of describing Bitcoin either as a security, as a currency, or as digital gold? What do you foresee later for this year or next year?
See, I would say phase one is it's a better store of value. Everybody's comparing it to gold, and that is why they all anticipating that it's going to cross gold's market cap, and that's how it's going to reach 700, $800,000 a coin, right? So that is number one. And now we know that 20th of Jan, probably closer to that date, Trump is taking office. So once he announces that they're going to add Bitcoin as part of their strategic stockpile or reserve asset, whatever you call it,
Hmm.
I feel that the first thing what they're going to do is they're going to reserve that 200,000 Bitcoin what they have. They got it through the Silk Road, and they're going to move that coins as part of their strategic reserve without printing money and buying Bitcoin or without selling their gold certificates and moving that money. That is going to happen at a later stage. But the first thing they're going to secure that 200,000, giving an assurance to the Bitcoin community and everybody around the world that they're not going to sell their Bitcoin. Number one. And
Mm.
by doing that, there are already countries who are buying it behind the curtains. They haven't mentioned that because, nobody wants to cross US and, have them as part of their bad books. They don't want to do that. So currently they're all accumulating. That's why you see there are rumors that UAE's got more than 300,000 Bitcoin. And there is no smoke without fire, right? So once they announce it, every country is going to, have Bitcoin as part of their strategic reserve asset. So that is what I see is happening in 2025. So if I have to put a number to it, my base case scenario would be 175 or 180,000 USD to 220. I feel that is the top, which can happen in quarter 4 of this year, right? But if you ask me as my gut scenario, looking, hearing what things are happening and where it is going, I feel that we are going to be between 350 to $500,000, which I see. And I see that bull run getting extended to probably first quarter of 2026. And
Wow. Okay.
people say that this cycle might be different because this time nations are FOMOing into Bitcoin. And we already know that if you look at the hash rate, we already know that, there are countries which are mining Bitcoin with government resources. Looking all of that, I wouldn't be surprised if I see my gut feeling, which is 350 to $500,000 coin
Okay.
in next 12 to 18 months.
Oh, that's great. That's brilliant. I'm sure all the Bitcoiners listening to this episode will be over the moon with those figures. But again, this is not, investment or legal advice. So please don't take this as financial advice. This is only for education and entertainment purposes. Okay, so Varun, moving on to the other fears of Bitcoin, I think that one that comes to mind is security and technical risk, right? So when I talk about security and technical risk, I'm talking about exchange hacks and scams, user errors and irreversibility, quantum, network congestion, things like that. So do you want to start us off in regards to what are your thoughts on security and technical risk?
Sure. First thing I would say that before I start off by saying yes, there are issues, but if you self custody it, I don't see any issue. So that's number one. But the problem here is that a lot of people are not comfortable, having 100% accountability or responsibility of holding on to their own money, which we never had that with respect to any of the asset or security which we have in traditional finance, be it stocks, be it real estate, be it gold, anything, right? Even the money in a bank account is not ours. We just have access to it until we don't. So this is the first time we have an asset where we can have 100% ownership, 100% control over our money, and it's portable. We can move anywhere in the world, but it comes with a sense of responsibility. So if you do not take your keys seriously, or you do not take your keys in a way that, if you're not sincere about it, there are possibilities that you can lose all your money and nobody can help you get that money.
Mm,
So yes, I would say there are concerns, but if you go through the right way and you do the right due diligence, I would say that once you self custody it, you are not concerned whether any exchanges are getting hacked, or if there is, if anybody is basically trying to sell you paper Bitcoin, then you see that you technically don't have all of that. So I don't see any of the risk because I've been into this, Bitcoin world for quite some time, and I know that self custody is the best way to move forward, and that's the only way you can secure your money.
right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. But again, self custody is not something that everybody is technically savvy to do it. But I think, Varun, you and me, we spoke that we will be doing a video or an episode on self custody where we can talk about how to do self custody, right? In regards to, hacks like exchanges being hacked and, there were rampant scams, you mentioned FTX, things like that, which has definitely eroded the trust in the broader ecosystem of Bitcoin. Do you think those scams are still possible after everything that we've seen, heard, and everything, all the experiences we've had with those scams till date?
Anything is possible. If you tell me tomorrow Coinbase might be out of business, that is also possible. It can also happen with Binance. So the first thing you need to remind yourself, what was the reason that you got into it? Because you do not trust anybody else. The reason you got into Bitcoin is because you don't need to trust Bitcoin. You can verify it's a code. Then you will not leave your coins on the exchange. So if you're doing that, that means somehow you were never convinced in the first place that why you should be investing or saving your money in Bitcoin.
Mm.
So anybody who's doing that is purely there to make some quick money and leave. Remember, in
Speculation.
that case scenario, a lot of people are going to lose money. And it happened
Mm.
with me also. For the first time I got involved was in 2015, and I sold everything because I was there to make money, right? But and everybody goes through that cycle. And once you understand that why you are getting into Bitcoin, then I have never met any client of mine who understood what Bitcoin is and still have coins on the exchange,
Mm.
because it's our responsibility to make sure that they don't, right? And they
Mm.
self custody their coins.
Right, right. Yeah, that's really good to know. Okay, and then in regards to, we were talking about governments mining Bitcoin or government funds mining Bitcoin, and that way the mining is just coming into the handful, few in the world. And that kind of is creating the centralization of mining, Bitcoin mining, which is also a fear and is part of that, topic that we're discussing now regarding security and technical risk. So I think what I'm really getting to is that centralization is a fear, which obviously can lead to network congestions and concentration and monopoly and or duopoly or oligopoly in Bitcoin mining. So they can control what they can do in terms of with Bitcoin. So that's also a fear. What do you think about that?
Yes, I would say this is a valid point that you have in your mind, and yes, that's a challenge. This is why you may have seen right now Bitcoin mining. First of all, it was about the energy, that it is consuming a lot of energy. So that part got resolved because now over 50% of the mining is done through renewable source of energy, right? And secondly, US holds nearly one third of the mining capability or the capacity as compared to the whole pie. But as far as people are running their own nodes, I don't see this as a fear, because mining, yes, it's very difficult for common people to get into mining today because you need a lot of funds, you need a lot of cash flow, and you need a lot of space and infrastructure in order to mine Bitcoin. So this is why it's easier and cheaper for us to just go onto exchange, buy and sell custody. So far we are in a situation where we are able to buy Bitcoin through fiat currencies, but eventually that is going to go away. So this is why I encourage everybody to study it and buy it as early as possible. But as far as
Right.
the risk is concerned, the risk I see here, if you have read, if you've seen the presentation which was recently shared by BlackRock, where they have more than $10 trillion as under management, and in that presentation they had mentioned that that could be more than 21 million if the majority holders comes together and they have more than 50% of bitcoins with them, and they can hard fork it, what happened with Bitcoin Cash and all of that. But my point is, why will you go through all of that? Because it also the network effect.
Mm-hmm.
There is a reason why there are more people on Uber as compared to any other brand. There are the and that there are reasons why everybody is on YouTube and not on the alternative, and maybe Google search and so on and so forth, right? So you can't just create another coin, or you can't just say that from tomorrow, because Bitcoin is slow. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes for a transaction to go through. So it's not feasible. That is why there are layer twos being built on. That is why we have a Lightning Network. That is why, and even if somebody hard, what happened with Bitcoin Cash? Everybody who were transitioning from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, they were at the same. One Bitcoin Cash is equal to one Bitcoin. But look at the value in terms of fiat currency, or with respect to Bitcoin. So you also need people to support that. If you and I say no, we are not going to do it, and people who got their coins on the in their hardware wallets, you don't need to do anything, and
Right.
so you can just create another coin, but you need people to follow it. And it's down now. It's nearly $2 trillion. So now it's too big to fail. The bigger it gets, the difficult it is. If Bitcoin had to fail, we wouldn't have reached 100,000. We would have reached president of US talking about Bitcoin as putting as part of the strategic reserve, where we reached $2 trillion, we reached 100,000 in 16 years, and so on and so forth. So I
Mm.
think so the time has passed, and now it's no longer. That's why they say that if you can't fight them, you join them. And
Yeah.
that is why every country is embracing it.
I think that's a really good answer, and that kind of brings us, nicely into the next topic. It's a good segue to environmental impact as a fear that we spoke about. So, mining, yes. How you are mining Bitcoin and what energies, renewable energies or not, you're using. I think that's a big concern because also, it's a Bitcoin, mining it uses high energy, right? The consumption is very high. So is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Is it substantial energy? Is it, sourced in the right way possible? And things like that. So have you heard any kind of agendas, any kind of, you know, promises made by governments that they're going to be watching Bitcoin mining very closely and, see what the real impact is it's having on.
Not anymore, because I told you right now there are countries like UAE, Argentina, Brazil. They all started mining Bitcoin with their government resources. So that is gone now. Everybody is using renewable source. El Salvador is doing mining through volcano. I would say that Bitcoin mining through renewable source of energy, that topic is already taken care of. It's nearly 55 to 60% of mining today is done through renewable source. And
Hmm.
nowadays, countries are also too focused on the carbon footprint and all of that. So I don't see that as a challenge anymore. And I would rather say that this is no longer a challenge or a fear, and it should not be in anybody's mind.
Right. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then I think this brings us to the last topic in terms of fears. Is we spoke about this. I think we touched on this very briefly. Threat of technological disruption, like quantum computing. Have you done any research recently on how quantum computing, like Google's Qubit, what was it called, Willow, right? They came up with that chip Willow, which can run in hundreds and hundreds of qubits, which can actually hack the network. Not there yet, but in theory, quantum computer could hack the Bitcoin network, is what I've been hearing and reading and seeing. So, have you heard anything about that? Do you know anything about that?
I can just say that we need to have a dedicated video on that topic. But just to answer your question, I would say that before Willow can or quantum computers are able to hack Bitcoin, they will be able to hack everything before Bitcoin. So be it
Hmm.
money in your bank account, be it your real estate property, be it the gold, money, everything. So we are looking at something only at Bitcoin. But before that, even your credit cards, even everything, they could hack it. But I don't see that as a threat because it's not possible. And this has already been answered by Satoshi Nakamoto in the white paper, the 9 pages that we've read. But for our audience and for our listeners, we should have dedicated video, and it should be in simple terms and simple, in a simple language where people are able to understand that where we are coming from. But just to answer, no, it's no longer a threat.
Okay, that's good to know. I thought so too, actually. I've also read some of those, you know, things on quantum computing, and it's not a threat to Bitcoin. So that's great. Any final thoughts before we wrap this episode up?
Just this is the only time I can say that where people are able to buy and become a whole coiner. When I say a whole coiner, that means somebody who's got one Bitcoin, because one Bitcoin is equal to 100 million satoshis. Very soon, whole coiners are going to be at a different level altogether. Everything, the terminologies, everything is going to change. Everything, people will start talking about Sats, satoshis, right? So I think so. This is the time where one should study it, and it's a humble request that don't get left behind. Study Bitcoin and dollar cost average it, as AJ had mentioned. We've been saying that in our previous videos as well. And self custody. And now is the time. Nobody is late to Bitcoin. Don't compare yourself with somebody else. Just try and evaluate your situation, that you should not be losing your purchasing power, and the intention is to be better than yesterday. With fiat currencies, we are all losing money every day. It's like a melting ice cube in our hand. And we also have taxation to take care of, we have inflation to take care of, we have devaluation to also be to take care of. So I would say please study Bitcoin, and once you are convinced, dollar cost average it and self custody.
Perfect. Very good answer. Very good ending. Thanks a lot, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you in the next one.